There, and a developing story that we're following here as well with the verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial. And we're joined now by one of our Two on Your Side legal analyst, Paul Cambria. Paul, thanks for joining us so quickly. And speed is just the topic I want to begin with. What are we to make, do you think, of this jury being ready with a verdict when at this time yesterday they were still listening to closing arguments?
Yeah, I don't think it bodes too well for the defense. I thought that the best they could hope for here was a hung jury, and that's not happening. I would, however, not be surprised if they convicted him only of the lowest offense, which carries 10 years. The highest is 40, the next is 25, the lowest is 10. And sometimes that's what it takes to bring certain people who may be reluctant to vote guilty, say, well, you know, let's take the lowest offense kind of thing. I think that's what we can expect here. But you never know what jurors are going to do.
Well, that's for sure. And let's get more into what the charges are and what you make of those and what is the difference between some of these charges, because a lot of us, you know, are watching this as very much as beginners. We're amateurs. We don't understand the difference between all these charges.
Yeah, the way it goes, and it's the same in New York, for example, the more you intend a murder, the higher the punishment is, the higher the crime. The more you intend to do one thing, but murder results, then it's lesser. If you intend only to do something that you didn't believe was going to commit any crime, or I'm sorry, it was going to commit death or result in death, it was negligent on your part, that sort of thing, then it's manslaughter. So it's always the intent of the actor and the consequences. And the clearer your intent, the more severe the punishment, the more negligent or reckless your intent or your actions, the less the punishment.
And is there a strategy here too, Paul, as well, to get something, to come up with something that will stick with the jury?
Well, definitely. And I mean, it surprised me a little bit. And, you know, it's tough. You can't second guess the defense lawyer because he only knows his case, you know, better than anyone else does. But it surprised me there wasn't more of a humanizing of the police officer's job. That, you know, you go to work and you may not come home, and that's a reality. Things move very quickly and you have to make snap decisions under the circumstances, you know, that kind of thing. And really his summation was all based on mostly on science and medicine kind of thing. So that was a little tough. On the prosecution standpoint, it was simply, hey, look, we got to a point where it was obvious he wasn't resisting anymore. He still applied the force and the guy died. I mean, he kept it very simple, and I think that's going to resonate with these jurors.
And we're catching up here on Most Buffalo. There is a verdict rather, in the Derek Chauvin trial. The verdict is expected to be read at 4:30 our time, and NBC will have a special report, so we will bring that to you as it happens. But right now we're talking more about the case with Paul Cambria. Paul, take us inside what's happening right now, because we know very little about actual court cases besides maybe what we see on TV. What is going on right now, and what is this process going to look like for us at 4:30?
Well, what happens, the jury hands a note basically to the bailiff saying they have a verdict. Sometimes there's a verdict form. They check the box as to guilty or not guilty. And this 1 hour wait is not unusual, because no matter which way this verdict goes, there's going to be unrest. I mean, there just is. And not everybody is going to be happy on either side. So I think this is a 1 hour, you know, get ready, get the forces out, get the troops out, all of that to keep some peace. So I'm not surprised about that at all. We see that in a lot of these high profile cases. Usually the jury, like here, if we had a regular case, they'd say we have a verdict, they'd march them right into court and say what the verdict is. So to give it the hour, you know, they're waiting for some activity, and it's certainly going to happen. But that's it. You'll find out who the foreperson is now, because under their system, that person may actually announce the verdict. Sometimes the clerk of the court just reads the verdict. So we'll see how that goes here.
It's interesting.
Oh, and there'll be a polling, I'm sure, of the jury. And they will ask each individual juror, is this your verdict? And every now and then, very rarely, some jurors say no. and then they send them back to deliberate. I don't expect that here.
Overall, Paul, if you look at this overall, an hour is not that long of a time to wait when you consider how long the closing arguments went on. What did you make of how each side closed yesterday?
Well, like I say, I was surprised that the defense didn't talk more about what a dicey kind of job it can be to be a police officer. That, you know, there can be a surprise at any moment. Many of them have lost their lives doing their work. They're making these split-second judgments. They're not medical people and so on. They're in the field. Don't second-guess somebody under this pressure and all the rest of it. So we didn't see that. Prosecution, on the other hand, like I say, I thought made it fairly simple. Here's the video, and that's another thing. In a case with video, they're much tougher from both sides. If the video doesn't support prosecution, it's going to be tough, and vice versa on the defense. Here we have pictures. If we didn't have pictures, this would have been a much different case, because then you would have had people just describing what happened. There'd be a lot of differences of opinion and so on. It'd be a much different deal. So this is what's happened to us in these days with cell phones and body cams and all the rest of it. It has really changed the way cases are tried in the courtroom.
Paul, right now the jury is the focus and they're so important, but we know nothing about who makes up this jury and who these people are. After this verdict is read, will there be an opportunity for us to get to know who is on the jury?
That'll be up to them. And they keep the juries anonymous in cases like this. And the judge will tell the jurors that they have the right to not speak to anyone, or they have the right to speak to whomever they like. We've seen some jurors who have capitalized on their jury service, that they've given stories, they've sold the stories and so on. We've seen others who just want to go home and forget the whole thing. Every now and then, you know, people are threatened. Usually jurors are spared any of that as far as, you know, danger and so on. But yeah, it'll be interesting. There will be some very vocal juror, I'm sure, and they will try to explain, you know, why everything happened the way it did.
We've been chatting with legal analyst Paul Cambria. Thank you again, Paul, for joining us on such short notice. The jury has delivered a verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial.